Chapter 1. Katarina Lin. When you open this letter, it means your marriage with Bruno has come to an end. Bruno's grandfather saved us. He once pleaded that if one day Bruno no longer loves you, he hopes to be given 3 more chances. And from then on, we would consider our family's debt repaid. The hot summer wind blows, yet carries a hint of chill. Katarina stands despondently at the bank's entrance, clutching her mother's last words, her red eyes brimming with intense pain. Even now, her mother is still fighting for Bruno, simply because she knows how deeply her daughter once loved him. In order to repay the life-saving grace of the Law family 10 years ago, Mother Lin has given too much to the Law family over the years. When the Law family faced bankruptcy, it was Mother Lin who sold all her possessions to help them rise again. When the old man of the Law family was critically ill, it was Mother Lin who donated blood to save him, nearly losing her life in the process. When Bruno faced revenge from his enemies, it was Katarina who risked her life to shield him from a knife, resulting in her blindness. She remembers that before falling into a coma, Bruno held her tightly, crying heart-wrenchingly, saying he would love her for a lifetime. Upon learning that Katarina had gone blind, Bruno stayed by her side, promising to be her eyes for a lifetime. How much Bruno loved Katarina, the whole city knew, earning them countless envious glances. Deeply moved, Katarina actively cooperated with the treatment and finally regained her sight a year later. When she excitedly returned home to share the good news with Bruno, she saw him entwined with Law's adopted daughter. Katarina felt as if the sky had collapsed and the earth had fallen away, as if countless silver needles were piercing her body. Kneeling on the ground in painful lament, she was disheartened and wanted to leave the city. While sorting through her mother's belongings, she opened the safe and found a letter. Her mother was a kind man who always upheld gratitude and hoped her daughter would be happy. Unfortunately, they both misjudged the person. Bruno betrayed their love. Fine. Give him 3 more chances. And after that, never see him again. Katarina gathered her emotions and returned to the villa. Just as she reached the door, she heard intoxicating moans from inside, like a heavy hammer striking her heart. She struggled to control her sadness, holding back tears as she recalled her mother's last words, and the pain on her face gradually eased. A hot air balloon passed over the villa area, with a large screen continuously displaying a line of text. Bruno will always love Katarina. Bruno, in order to express his love, constantly showcased it in various ways: the city center square's big screen, the hot air balloon in the sky, and even the advertisements on television, all featuring this line that made countless people feel like they were eating dog food. The heartfelt confession on the hot air balloon and the soul-stirring moans in the villa seemed like 2 different worlds. Since the morning, Katarina found them tangled in the room, and by the afternoon, they were still entwined when she returned home. How desperate they both were. Katarina walked into the living room with a blank expression. At that moment Bruno was pinning Elise on the sofa, relentlessly thrusting. He bit his lip hard to suppress any sound, but his eyes sparkled with a wild intensity. Elise seemed to deliberately provoke, looking at Katarina with unabashed mockery. "My dear Bruno, don't you feel that I am much better than this fool? Tell me, who do you really love?" Elise biting Bruno's ear, forcing him to make a choice. Bruno looked confused, panting, "Of course I love you. She's just a blind fool. How can she compare to you? Katarina, you're back." Katarina struggled to suppress her inner sadness, groping her way to the sofa, as if the painful scene before her hadn't happened, but her hand in her pocket was tightly clenched, seeping blood that stained the fabric. The man she loved most, fooling around with another woman right in front of her. If it weren't for her mother's dying wish, Katarina would have killed this pair of scoundrels. Bruno was about to speak, but was interrupted by Elise, who kissed him on the lips and pointed to the box on the coffee table. "Are you crazy?" Bruno's eyes flashed with shock, but his body was completely out of control. Gritting his teeth, he gasped towards Katarina. Katarina, I have a cold. Could you pass me that box of medicine on the right?" Katarina's breath hitched. Her body involuntarily trembled, but she quickly regained her composure and handed over the condom. Bruno didn't dare to linger outside, fearing that Katarina would catch on, and although he knew she couldn't see, he still held on to Elise as he returned to the room. Bruno. Just as Bruno was about to leave, Katarina looked at the background of the two, her voice surprisingly calm. Are you really sick? Bruno's expression changed slightly. Hesitating for a moment before making a decision, he pretended to cough. Yeah, you should go back to your room first. I'm afraid of infecting you. I'll accompany you later. After saying that, he hurriedly rushed into the room with Elise. Katarina quietly sat on the sofa, not noticing the blood seeping from her pocket, staining the sofa. The pain in her body was far less than the pain in her heart. She gave Bruno one chance, but unfortunately he did not know how to cherish it. With 2 more chances, Katarina will completely disappear from Bruno's world. Chapter 2. The bedroom door opened, and the chaotic scene inside was vividly visible. Bruno was lost in a daze, and Elise's slightly smug face was imprinted in her mind, lingering even when she turned away. Katarina's heart had gone numb. She sat on the sofa for a full half hour, watching the thrilling battle for half an hour. The fiancé who loved her to the bone on ordinary days was now reveling with Elise, the adopted daughter, at home. This scene was like a dull knife, slicing away Katarina's heart. Piece by piece, Katarina told herself that there was no need to be sad for a man who betrayed her. Yet the tears continued to collapse uncontrollably. Perhaps it was because Katarina was present. The two felt an overwhelming thrill. When Bruno came out wearing a bathrobe, more than an hour had passed. Elise strolled into the living room, completely naked, glanced at Katarina on the sofa, and smirked, unabashedly displaying her pride and mockery. The air in the villa was filled with a foul smell, and as Bruno approached, Katarina felt her stomach churn, covering her mouth. Bruno's expression changed dramatically as he took a step forward and half knelt in front of her, grasping Katarina's hand with a tone full of concern. Katarina, what's wrong with you? Do you need to go to the hospital? His concern was evident, and the pain in his eyes was clear to see. Katarina instinctively pushed him away, feeling that he was very dirty. Bruno didn't think much of it. He assumed Katarina was unwell and immediately took out his phone to contact the medical team, summoning all the experts from his hospital. Elise glanced at Bruno with a hint of jealousy as he cared so much for Katarina. She hugged Bruno from behind, her hands becoming restless. Elise's expression turned frantic, desperately wanting to conquer Bruno right in front of Katarina. Unfortunately, Bruno cared too much for Katarina and merely shot a cold glare, making Elise behave. It's nothing, probably just a little cold. Taking some medicine will be fine. Katarina just wanted to get away as quickly as possible, unwilling to see the disgusting pair any longer. Bruno tested Katarina's temperature several times, confirming that she was not seriously hurt, and then he breathed a sigh of relief, tightly embracing her. His eyes filled with love. Katarina, if you ever feel unwell, you must tell me. You have no idea how worried I was just now. Katarina remained expressionless, her gaze falling on the kiss mark on Bruno's neck. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I really wouldn't have known how disgusting Bruno was, saying he loves her while being intimate with someone else. Tomorrow is our 5-year anniversary. I have prepared a surprise for you. My dear, you will definitely like it. Bruno held Katarina's hand and walked into the bedroom, which was filled with various precious luxuries, each one worth a fortune. Katarina, I promised that I would give you the best things in the world, making you the happiest woman. He placed each gift into Katarina's hands, explaining them in a tone filled with love. Katarina felt the stickiness in her hands. Whether it was on the gift, the bed, or even the floor, it was filled with the traces of Bruno and Elise having loved. The smell of betrayal from the gift overwhelmed her. She could no longer control herself and had to pretend to be blind, groping her way into the bathroom, where she began to vomit violently. She felt as if she were about to expel her bile, her whole body in agony, unable to muster any strength. Bruno held her tightly from behind, tears streaming down his face as he said, I'm sorry. I didn't take good care of you. Perhaps out of guilt. Bruno led Katarina to the guest room, spending several hours soothing her to sleep. After he left, Katarina opened her eyes, staring blankly at the ceiling. From Bruno's performance just now, it seems he really loves her, but this kind of person makes Katarina feel utterly disgusted. Katarina just wants to leave this hypocritical man. In a haze, Katarina fell asleep, not knowing how long it had been, until she was startled awake by the intense gasping from outside. Her mouth was dry and she wanted to drink water. But the moment she opened the door, she happened to see Bruno entangled with Elise. Elise was teasing Bruno while growling, "Bruno, when can we be together openly and honestly?" Immersed in joy, Bruno suddenly snapped back to reality, raising his hand to slap her. His tone grave, "You better not have any thoughts of replacing Katarina. Her position in my heart is unique. Do you understand?" Elise was consumed by jealousy but dared not show it. Lowering her head with a pleasing expression, "Bruno, rest assured, I know my place and will absolutely keep our secret." Standing not far away and witnessing this scene, Katarina returned to her room like a zombie, sitting on the edge of the bed and pulling out the box left by her mother. In addition to that will, there is another number. Lin's mother seemed to have anticipated their feelings and made the worst plans. Besides giving Bruno 3 final chances, she also arranged a way out for her daughter. Katarina took a deep breath, picked up her phone, and dialed the number. A few seconds later, an excited voice came from the other end. "Miss, after 10 years, are you finally planning to come home?" Chapter 3. The warm and excited concern from the other end of the phone stirred a hint of warmth in Katarina's heart. Ever since Lin's mother passed away and Bruno betrayed her, Katarina had been all alone, suddenly learning that she had other relatives in the world. From a secluded village in the northwest, everyone had been hoping for her return. After hanging up the phone, Katarina sat by the window, staring at the night sky, searching for the star that had appeared after her mother's death. The outside breathing continued throughout the night. Katarina gradually became numb from her initial despair. She desperately wanted to leave this suffocating place, not wanting to see the insincere Bruno, but due to her mother's last words, she had to give Bruno 2 more chances. Katarina curled up at the head of the bed, drifting into a hazy sleep. She had a dream of a warm home, where her mother was making soup in the kitchen, and Bruno held her tightly in his arms, whispering sweet nothings. Suddenly, darkness enveloped her, the figure of her mother in the kitchen gradually fading away, and Elise appeared like a demon, revealing a sinister smile as she took Bruno away. Katarina frantically chased after them, only to fall into an endless abyss, her body continuously plummeting, sinking into an eternal despair. When she was startled awake from a nightmare, the first thing she saw was a face full of concern. Bruno held her hand, his voice trembling. "Katarina, I'm sorry. I've been so busy with work lately that I've neglected you, and you've suffered because of it. Katarina looked at Bruno with tears welling in his eyes, feeling nothing at all. The man who had been entangled with someone else all night now wore a face full of deep affection. To be honest, Bruno's acting was too good. Katarina didn't want to see that disgusting face. Turning her head towards the window, at this moment, the sun was already high in the sky, and the originally warm sunlight became glaring and cold because of Bruno's presence. Bruno supported Katarina into the living room, personally cooked a large breakfast, his eyes filled with tenderness, bringing the meat porridge to her lips, gently blowing on it, taking care of her meticulously. Anyone who sees the city's financial elite tenderly feeding his fiancée porridge would show an expression of immense envy. For a brief moment, Katarina felt Bruno's affection and thought he was so perfect. If it weren't for Elise coming out of the bedroom, shattering her illusions, Katarina would think this was the marriage life she had always dreamed of. The affection on Bruno's face became so ironic, openly keeping other women at home. Seeing Bruno care for Katarina so much, Elise felt jealous in her heart, walked to the back, her hands becoming restless, opening her mouth to signal Bruno to feed her. Bruno was initially very panicked, but when he thought of Katarina being unable to see, he shot a glare at Elise, probably because the two of them had been too wild last night. After hesitating for a moment, he used his mouth to feed Elise soup. Katarina tightly clenched her fists, the old wounds reopening, blood staining the chair. She felt an overwhelming sense of anger and grief. Bruno was too much, treating her like a monkey. Unable to bear it any longer, Katarina rushed to the bathroom, vomiting uncontrollably. Not only was Bruno dirty, but all his belongings were dirty as well. Bruno was startled and rushed in, not caring at all about the filthy vomit, holding Katarina in his arms, panicking. "Katarina, what's wrong with you?" Katarina was extremely resistant to Bruno's physical contact, feeling so distressed that her whole body trembled. At this moment, she really wanted to tell Bruno the truth and question him why he was so cruel. Katarina did not want to see that hypocritical couple anymore, and just as she was about to speak, she saw the discarded pregnancy test in the nearby trash can. 2 red marks on the pregnancy test, like a nail, pierced through the crown of the head, pinning Katarina in place. Since her eye rehabilitation, she has not been touched by Bruno again. It is self-evident whose child is in her belly. It doesn't matter whether Elise accidentally or intentionally left the pregnancy test behind. Katarina suddenly laughed. She laughed at her own foolishness, underestimating Bruno's shamelessness. In that moment, her heart seemed to die. Katarina slowly looked up, staring into Bruno's eyes, her voice becoming eerily unfamiliar. "Bruno, there are others at home, right?" Chapter 4. Time seemed to stand still. Bruno's expression changed dramatically. The terror in his eyes was unmistakable, and Katarina remained silent, waiting for his confession. She felt too stifled and didn't want to pretend with Bruno any longer. But once the words were out, she regretted it. Besides not wanting to go against her mother's last wishes, she also didn't want to complicate matters. With Bruno's capabilities, stopping her from leaving would not be difficult, but being treated like a fool, Katarina instead hoped for a clean break between them. Half a minute had passed. Bruno, facing Katarina's questioning, instinctively wanted to kneel and admit his mistake, not knowing why he felt a sense of panic in his heart, but thinking that Katarina couldn't see it at all. It must be a misunderstanding. Bruno, after weighing it, gently stroked Katarina's face and smiled. "It must be Elise who has arrived. She helped me prepare a surprise for our anniversary and is probably here to report the results." He smiled so naturally, spoke so lightly, and when he mentioned Elise, the corners of his mouth lifted, showing no concealment of his inner joy. Yet it felt like a knife stabbing into his heart. Katarina did not expose his lies, and mocked herself for her earlier impulsiveness. Fortunately, Bruno was too self-assured, believing that everything was under his control. Bruno took Katarina to the bedroom, like a gentle husband, helping Katarina change her clothes, fixing her hair, emphasizing that today was their 5th anniversary, and he would definitely give her a big surprise. Katarina let Bruno manipulate her, her expression blank. The so-called surprise had long been seen. That pregnancy test was the biggest surprise. Seeing her lack of enthusiasm, Bruno thought she was just sulking, believing that as long as he presented the surprise, she would cheer up. He understands Katarina's temperament very well, so how could he really be angry if he loves her? "Sister-in-law, your dress looks really beautiful. It was worth the large sum Bruno spent to have it custom-made. You two look like a perfect match." Elise decided to stop hiding, quickly switching roles to become Bruno's confidant, praising Bruno for his good taste while saying how much he loves her. However, Katarina could see the jealousy and sarcasm in Elise's eyes when she spoke. Bruno looked at the 2 women in front of him, feeling an inexplicable sense of pride and possessiveness. During the preparation to go out, Elise's hands were mischievously wandering over Bruno, teasing Katarina, who was oblivious, deliberately provoking her. Bruno initially just frowned, but as Elise continued her teasing, his face began to flush. The 2 of them unabashedly kissed passionately in front of Katarina, almost melting into each other. Katarina remained expressionless. Her heart had long been shattered by Bruno. She no longer felt the heart-wrenching pain of yesterday. Instead, sitting calmly on the sofa, watching their performance, each act of betrayal dulled her feelings for the city and this man, until everything faded away. Fortunately, Bruno still remembered the surprise for the anniversary. Not giving Elise any chance to continue, he held Katarina with his left hand and wrapped his right arm around Elise as they walked towards the Maybach parked at the door. The driver of the Law family looked calm, as if he was used to such scenes. Katarina then realized that perhaps Bruno and Elise had been together for a long time. The entire Law family knew about their relationship, and only she was left in the dark like a fool. Bruno chartered a huge cruise ship, and for the several thousand meters before boarding, the road was lined with roses. Walking on the path of roses, Bruno reminisced about the loving times they shared, speaking as he wept, immersed in the beauty of love, completely unaware of Katarina's indifference. Katarina couldn't help but mock herself as she looked at the roses all the way. She had no idea what Bruno was feeling. She had never liked roses. The roses were meant for Elise. Upon arriving on the cruise ship, the sky suddenly ignited with fireworks. Bruno held Katarina's hand, his tone filled with deep affection. Katarina, can you hear me? I want the whole world to know how much I love you. He described to Katarina how splendid the fireworks were and how beautiful love could be. He specifically hired someone to design the fireworks, just to etch Katarina's name in the sky. Katarina looked up at the sky, gazing at the name formed by the fireworks, and softly asked, Bruno, is that my name up there? Bruno's eyes sparkled, his face adorned with a blissful longing. As he nodded, yes, it's your name. But what Katarina actually saw was Elise's name, beneath the fireworks. On the cruise ship, Elise's face was flushed, her eyes filled with greed and desire. Bruno harbors love for Katarina, yet his gaze falls upon Elise, presenting yet another scene. Only Katarina remains indifferent, tired of the emotions between the two. This is also quite good. She gave Bruno his first chance again, but he missed it. Now only one chance remains. She can completely leave the other, return to the mountains and forests, never to be seen again. Chapter 5. Under the reflection of fireworks. Each harbors their thoughts, hidden deep within their eyes. Bruno's various actions indeed show love for Katarina, but the love that once was has been given to another woman. Since that night watching their performance at the guest room door, Katarina's heart for Bruno has died, and she can no longer be moved by his affectionate actions. She merely watched coldly, without speaking. In Bruno's eyes, it was just a tantrum, blaming him for the lack of companionship during this time. Bruno held Katarina's hand, gazing at the name in the sky, his smile radiant. Next, he arranged many gifts. Placed on the deck of the cruise ship, Bruno led Katarina into the mountain of gifts. As if walking into an ocean of happiness, Bruno casually picked up a gift that was worth a fortune, allowing Katarina to touch it with her hands. Each gift has a story, like 1001 Nights, with endless tales and unending love to express. Katarina calmly looked at these gifts, the sweet words of Bruno echoing in her ears. Yet she found it incredibly ironic. Each gift actually bore a name, and that name was Elise. Yet Bruno could betray his conscience. Perhaps he had long since lost his heart, which is why he could so honestly lie to her. When they first got together, it was Bruno who, with all his might, knelt before Lin's mother and vowed to treat her well for the rest of his life, promising to make Katarina the happiest person in the world. At that time, Bruno was filled with Katarina in his eyes, considering her feelings in everything he did. Even after years of dating, he was still full of love. They were the benchmark of love in the entire city, and Katarina became the object of everyone's envy. It's just that she didn't know when it started. But Bruno had changed. Scenes from the past floated in her mind, contrasting sharply with the disgusting face she made while lying at this moment. And Katarina felt extremely uncomfortable. She didn't want to watch Bruno's performance any longer and said she was tired and needed to rest. Bruno thought she was still unwell, so he hurriedly brought her into the room, tightly hugging her before leaving, asking her forehead, Katarina, I will love you forever. Katarina responded with a sound of acknowledgement, non-committal, and closed her eyes. Bruno wanted to stay with her but received a text message. Without hesitation, he hurriedly got up. Katarina, I have something to attend to. I'll come back later. Katarina didn't want to stay in the confined space, feeling suffocated and uncomfortable. As Bruno left the room, she wanted to go to the deck to clear her mind. As she passed by the adjacent room, she heard a familiar voice and couldn't help but stop in her tracks. In the room, Bruno had a cold expression, staring at the aggrieved Elise, and raised his hand to slap her. Are you playing with fire? Do you know? Elise unilaterally changed Katarina's name and replaced all the gifts, causing Bruno almost to be unable to handle the situation. Bruno, I'm sorry. I know your heart only belongs to my sister-in-law. I shouldn't have such delusions. If you're angry, just blame me for caring too much about you. Elise honestly admitted her mistake, hugging Bruno from behind, tears streaming down her face. Seeing her sad expression, the anger on Bruno's face faded, and with Elise's teasing, his breathing became rapid. The scent of desire permeated the room, and the two quickly became immersed in a passionate kiss. I warn you, this is the last time. No one can replace Katarina. Bruno enjoyed Elise's service while coldly warning her. Elise did not respond, but simply increased her strength, causing Bruno to gasp and no longer able to scold her. Not far away, Katarina watched the scene before her, calmly opening her phone to record the unsightly spectacle. If Bruno were to entangle her when leaving, it might have some effect. Watching her fiancé indulge with the adopted daughter at home, despite having given up on Bruno, her heart still ached with a dull pain. It turns out that not giving up completely is because she once loved too deeply. Katarina couldn't finish recording and fled because she felt too disgusted. Staying in her room for a long time, Bruno arrived late, his face flushed, clearly having found considerable satisfaction, wanting to hold Katarina's hand, but was abruptly pushed away. Bruno stood frozen in place, staring at Katarina's numb expression, his heart racing and feeling anxious. Katarina, I'm sorry. I was just caught up with an urgent matter at the company and neglected you. Please don't be angry, okay? Bruno was half kneeling on the ground, with two clear bite marks on the neck under his shirt collar. He raised his head, his face full of pain and affection. Katarina struggled to suppress her discomfort, her hollow eyes fixed on Bruno, then shifted to the window, whispering softly, Bruno, will you betray our relationship? Bruno without a moment's hesitation, his expression serious. Katarina, if I betray our relationship, may I not die a good death? Katarina smiled, closed her eyes, and did not want to hear his lies anymore. So boring. After the surprises on the luxurious cruise ship, Bruno took Katarina back to the villa, accompanied by her personal assistant, Elise. When Bruno went to park the car, Elise helped Katarina into the living room and suddenly pushed her to the ground. You heard me with Bruno last night, right? Chapter 6. Elise looked down at Katarina lying on the ground, her expression changing rapidly, and mocked, a blind person should have some self-awareness. Stop using emotions as an excuse. Bruno has long stopped loving you. He only supports you out of pity for your disability. Be smart and get lost. Don't delay him from finding happiness. Katarina got up, calmly looking at Elise, observing the face twisted by jealousy, yet feeling very calm inside. Elise rolled her eyes, glanced outside, and quietly reminded, you don't know Bruno is so infatuated with my body, always wanting it. Do you remember why Bruno was in such a hurry to leave when you were critically ill last time? Katarina shuddered, revealing disbelief. Her shattered heart was torn open again, the wound continuously bleeding. Last year, Bruno was retaliated against by enemies over a piece of land. Katarina rushed up to shield her from the knife, losing her sight and her life hanging by a thread. Bruno held her, crying hoarsely, vowing to love her for a lifetime, to always be her eyes. When she lay in the emergency room, feeling the ebb of life, she heard Bruno calling and managed to hold on to her life. For over an hour, it seemed that Bruno was not by her side, saying he was sorry and had matters to handle at the company. At that time, Katarina didn't think much of it, not realizing that he was actually fooling around with Elise. She was given a critical condition notice, yet Bruno was in the car with another woman. No wonder when she woke up, she smelled something disgusting. Elise revealed a big secret on the day your mother died. Weren't you crying unconscious? I spent the whole night with Bruno in the next room. Katarina's expression changed dramatically, raising her hand to slap Elise, shouting in anger, beast. But that was Mother's funeral. How could Bruno dare? Even though she was completely disheartened by Bruno, thinking of the despicable things he had done brought her immense pain. Elise covered her face, her expression twisted, blind fool. How dare you hit me? I have many ways to make you disappear. Don't think that just because you occupy the title of Bruno's fiancé, you can be safe. Everyone in the Law family wants you to get lost. Under the provocation of several words, Katarina felt dizzy and could not stand, collapsing onto the sofa, breathing heavily, tears flowing uncontrollably. How much they sacrificed for the Law family. The mother loved Bruno so dearly, but does Law family really respond to them like this? Katarina originally just wanted to part ways amicably, but after 3 chances, she quietly left without a sound. Yet now, her heart is faintly filled with a trace of resentment. Why should those who betray love continue to live freely, while the victims must endure endless torment? Elise was slapping Katarina's cheek, quite pleased with the stimulating effect, clicking her tongue in wonder, rather than clinging stubbornly to Bruno. It's better to hurry up and leave. At least save some face for yourself. If you get kicked out by the Law family, you'll be in big trouble. Katarina clutched her chest, staring intently at Elise. Elise was indifferent. A blind person posed no threat to her. Just as she was about to continue her sarcasm, Bruno walked into the living room. Upon seeing Katarina's sad expression, his face changed dramatically, and he stepped forward to slap Elise hard, his eyes almost blazing with fury. Is this how you take care of your sister-in-law? Elise looked pale, seeing Bruno unreasonably hitting her, her resentment towards Katarina deepening in her heart. But she did not dare to resist and could only lower her head to admit her mistake. Bruno held Katarina, his face full of pain, his voice trembling. Katarina, why do you look so pale? Please don't scare me. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have left you at home for work. He suddenly raised his head and shouted at Elise. What are you standing there for? Hurry up and call a doctor. Elise, her eyes were red, filled with grievance, as she turned and rushed out of the villa. Bruno, seeing her sorrowful figure, his expression changed slightly, and a flash of reluctance crossed his eyes. He instinctively wanted to chase after her, but thinking of Katarina still being by his side, he suppressed his irritation and sat down. Katarina, after knowing that he was still fooling around with Elise even during her mother's funeral and while her own life was in danger, she felt nothing but intense disgust towards him. Even the slightest physical touch made her feel unable to breathe. Katarina quickly pushed him away and stepped aside to take deep breaths. Bruno thought she was angry for not having company, patiently explaining a lot. Katarina really did not want to see him and pretended to feel dizzy to return to her room to rest. She lay on the bed, closed her eyes, and sensed Bruno entering the room, softly asking a few questions. And after confirming she was asleep, he hurriedly left. The moment the door closed, Katarina opened her eyes, came to the window, and just in time saw Bruno's vehicle speeding out of the villa. It's obvious where he would go without even thinking. Katarina didn't want to stay in the villa. This house filled with a nauseating atmosphere, which would evoke her painful memories. She packed her things and placed them in another room. Bruno thought she was blind and wouldn't leave, so he wouldn't check the luggage at all. Katarina spent half a day hanging all the gifts that Bruno had given her on the internet for $9.90. When the delivery guy packed up all the gifts and left, she received a call from the village manager of Pei family. The manager asked her when she would be back. As the village was looking forward to her return, Katarina estimated the time, knowing that with Bruno's character, it wouldn't be long before he wasted his last chance. So she gave a date. Uncle has feelings now. Wait for me to finish my business here, and then I will leave. Leave? What do you mean by leave? Katarina had just hung up the phone when a voice filled with inexplicable terror came from behind her. Chapter 7. Bruno struggled greatly to calm Elise, promising to buy her more gifts before he could finally extricate himself. But worried about Katarina, he hurried back. When I heard her say she wanted to leave, my heart twisted violently, surging with an inexplicable panic. Bruno looked flustered, nervously watching Katarina. When he met her calm face, it felt as if he were about to lose the most important thing in his life. Almost kneeling in front of her, desperately clutching her thigh. Katarina, are you going to leave me? Looking down at Bruno's terrified face, Katarina found it extremely ridiculous, especially the marks on his neck, indicating he had just been intimate with Elise. How could he betray their feelings while acting so affectionate? Katarina remained silent, calmly looking at Bruno, as if saying another word would be unnecessary. Bruno, seeing her silence, felt increasingly terrified. his voice filled with pleading. Katarina, I know I've neglected you during this time and made you sad. You can hit me, scold me, or even kill me, but please don't leave me. I love you so much. Without you, I don't know what meaning life has. Have you forgotten? Your mother's greatest wish was for us to get married. Until Bruno was about to collapse. Katarina smiled and gazed out the window. Her eyes distant. A friend of mine is planning to go abroad, possibly leaving this city forever, and wants to meet up with me. I refused because I can't see. Where can someone like me, who is disabled, go without you? Katarina made a self-deprecating joke. Bruno's expression changed. He felt that Katarina was not quite right, but thinking that she was blind and couldn't possibly go anywhere, his emotions gradually calmed down. Just now, she really thought that Katarina had discovered something that would make her disappear forever. You scared me to death. Bruno burst into tears of laughter, stood up, and hugged Katarina, burying his head in her chest. His tone filled with determination. Katarina, no matter what you become, you will always be mine. From now on, we will get married and have many children. Katarina did not turn back, allowing Bruno to hold her, her gaze coldly fixed on the sky. There was one last chance to leave Bruno forever. She never wanted to see Bruno again, let alone get married and have children. Perhaps sensing something unusual about Katarina, the next few days Bruno stayed at home, taking care of her meticulously, as if returning to the past. Bruno would help her prepare foot baths and would also help her comb her hair. She stayed at home, not having to do anything, watching the busy figure in the kitchen making her favorite osmanthus cake. Katarina had a fleeting illusion that the betrayals were merely an illusion. If she couldn't see it, she would never discover Bruno and Elise's affair. Bruno was still that perfect fiancé, and she would be immersed in happiness. But suddenly, the image of her mother's funeral flashed in her mind, with Bruno and Elise in the next room in a frenzy. Katarina's heart felt as if it had been struck hard, making it difficult to breathe. Katarina knew that no matter how much Bruno loved her, betrayal could never be forgiven. Bruno had made osmanthus cake and placed it in front of Katarina. Picking up a piece to feed her, the sunlight bathed his face, radiating a sacred glow. At that moment, he was a devoted good man, a model of love for the entire city, and an object of admiration for countless people. Just as the osmanthus cake was being placed in his mouth, Bruno's phone received a message. He opened it in front of Katarina, and there was a picture on the screen. Elise was wearing a sexy lace nightgown, showcasing her stunning figure, exuding a strong sense of seduction. Bruno stared at the picture, swallowing hard, his eyes flickering with intense desire. His expression changed unpredictably, torn between love and desire. Finally, he stood up, forcing a smile. Katarina, there's an important meeting at the company that I need to handle. You stay at home obediently, and I'll be back soon. After saying that, she kissed Katarina on the forehead and almost rushed out, clearly unable to wait to see Elise. Katarina looked expressionless, watching him rush away like a whirlwind, unable to suppress her self-mockery. A few minutes after Bruno left, Elise called, her tone filled with arrogance. I told you before, you can never compete with me. As long as I beckon, Bruno will eagerly come to see me. Unfortunately, you are blind and cannot witness our affectionate scene. Don't you think Bruno loves you the most? That's just pity for your pathetic act of being a cripple. Katarina hadn't responded for a long time. Elise seemed to want to prove something, her tone becoming frantic. If you don't believe it, you can come and see for yourself Bruno how much he loves me. But unfortunately, you are blind and will never see her affectionate side. Elise thought it was pointless to continue striking at a blind person, casually mentioned an address, and then hung up the phone. She didn't think Katarina was capable of witnessing anything. Katarina calmly stood up, walked outside, wanting to witness the so-called happiness that Elise spoke of, which could also be considered her last chance for Bruno. I hope Bruno won't let her down. She took a taxi to the address that Elise specified. It was a high-end restaurant that Bruno had booked, and the entire courtyard was filled with vibrant roses, permeated with the scent of happiness. Katarina had just gotten out of the car when she saw a scene through the window that left her utterly shocked. Chapter 8. The high-end restaurant was filled with a joyful atmosphere. The Law family was all present, raising their glasses, gathering together, and laughing heartily. Elise was holding her belly, her face radiating maternal glow, while Bruno rested his head against her belly, as if he heard the child's call, startling him. The sound of blessings and laughter echoed around. Law mother held Elise's hand, took out a box, and sighed deeply. Elise, this is Law family's heirloom. Take it. From now on you will be Law family's daughter-in-law. Elise felt shy on the outside, but still accepted it calmly, exchanging a tender glance with Bruno. Law father cleared his throat and patted Elise's shoulder. We have watched you grow up since you were little. You and Bruno are truly a match made in heaven. Even without a formal title, you will always be the only daughter-in-law in everyone's hearts, and the mother of my grandson. Next, many people came forward to present gifts. Bruno's eyes sparkled as he tightly held Elise's hand. I promise that apart from that piece of paper, everything Katarina has, you will have. Elise was moved to the point of tears, her expression filled with longing. I can't wait to see our child born. That will be the fruit of our love. Even without a marriage certificate, our feelings will never change. Bruno was very pleased with Elise's understanding. Looking around, his tone became serious. The wedding must be kept a secret. Katarina must not know. Do you understand? Everyone nodded in agreement. The Law family parents had long been dissatisfied with Katarina. They could barely accept her and her son while they still had some value. But ever since Lin's mother passed away, Katarina became a burden, incompatible with the Law family. If it weren't for Bruno being strong enough and controlling most of the family's shares, the Law family parents would likely have been the first to kick Katarina out. Fortunately, Bruno came to terms with it, realizing that the child born from a union with the more outstanding Elise would be the heir of the Law family. As for that blind man, just treat him like a dog. It won't cost much to keep. Tomorrow we will hold the wedding at home, without too much extravagance. I worry that Katarina will overthink it. Elise, I'm sorry. Please bear with me for now. I will make it up to you later. Bruno made the final decision, even though Elise was very unhappy. After all, it was a lifelong matter, and she didn't want it to be rushed. But no one could defy Bruno. Next, everyone gathered together for a group photo, smiling so happily, so well-matched. Katarina didn't know how to leave the restaurant, walking on the way back like a walking corpse. Even though she knew Bruno betrayed their feelings, she never expected the truth to be so cruel. The people of the Law family not only knew early on about Bruno and Elise's relationship, but they also chose to accept and bless it. Katarina thought of how she and her son had almost sacrificed everything to gain the Law family's approval. What had they actually received? She felt that her life was so laughable, so tragic. Suddenly, the sky poured down heavy rain, and the pedestrians on the road hurriedly sought shelter. Katarina let the rain drench her, her body and soul forcibly separated. Dazed and confused, nearly getting hit by a car several times, she ignored the owner's angry shouts and numbly walked home, to that house filled with deception and betrayal, which could no longer offer her any warmth, only endless coldness. Katarina had been home for several hours, standing in the yard, gazing at the garden that had been adorned by the wind and rain, where the once vibrant begonia flowers now lay wilted and lifeless. Bruno loved begonia flowers, so Lin's mother filled the yard with them. Upon learning this, Bruno was deeply moved, kneeling before Lin's mother, vowing to treat Katarina well for a lifetime, promising never to betray her and to love her forever. Having endured the ravages of heavy rain, the begonia flowers withered away, just like Bruno's promise, which had turned into a joke. Katarina fainted in the yard. When she woke up, the first thing she saw was a face filled with worry and love, Bruno looking haggard, having stayed up all night by her side. Seeing Katarina awake, he rushed over, overwhelmed with joy and tears. Katarina, you almost scared me to death. Fortunately, the doctor said it was just a cold, and you'll be fine in a few days. Just thinking about you feeling unwell makes me wish I could take your place. Looking at the tears on Bruno's cheek, Katarina remained expressionless. She merely fainted in the yard, and Bruno was devastated. What would it be like to know she had completely disappeared? Katarina doesn't want to know. She just wants to leave this place as soon as possible. Bruno guarded by the bedside all night, his face haggard and barely able to stand. Yet he still insisted on cooking for Katarina. Katarina let Bruno serve her, like a living dead, staring blankly out the window. Bruno thought she was sick and had lost her spirit, so he didn't pay much attention, believing that once she recovered, she would be like before. The morning sunlight streamed through the window into reality, and Bruno's phone kept ringing, but he forcibly silenced it. Katarina found her tangled expression utterly absurd. Bruno was to marry Elise today, receiving everyone's blessings. Yet he stood by the side of a blind woman. Katarina felt a sense of guilt in her heart. How could she delay her wedding? Wouldn't that make her a sinner? She opened her cracked lips and finally spoke, "I'm much better." "It's nothing." Bruno felt a sense of relief when she spoke. Just as he was about to comfort her, his phone rang incessantly. After a moment's hesitation, he stepped outside to take the call. A few minutes later, Bruno returned to the room, looking at Katarina with words unspoken. A pale smile appeared on Katarina's white face. "If you have something to do, just go. I can take care of myself at home." Bruno confirmed again that Katarina was not joking, and after weighing his options, he nodded. "I'll be back soon. You just wait at home." After saying that, he got up to leave. His steps hurried as if he were rushing towards something beautiful. "Bruno." Just as Bruno was walking out the door, Katarina said, "Goodbye." Bruno stopped in his tracks and turned back to smile at Katarina. "Be good. I will be back to accompany you soon." Bruno left, to marry Elise, with a smile that carried a hint of anticipation. Katarina also smiled, her expression filled with relief. She gave Bruno a third chance. If only she had been honest and cut off contact with Elise. According to her mother's last words, she had to give the other party a chance. Fortunately, Bruno was very cooperative, leaving her at home. As the bells of the chapel rang, Bruno and Elise entered the hall of marriage, while Katarina carried her suitcase, walking through the entire yard of withered begonia flowers, leaving without looking back. From now on, she would live for herself, and never want to see Bruno again. Chapter 9. The wedding was low-key and luxurious but very brief, mainly to give Elise an explanation. Compared to Katarina, that blind one, the Law family is more inclined to adopt daughters as daughters-in-law. Everyone knows that Bruno and Elise cannot get a marriage certificate, but that does not prevent them from having a family heir. Even if that blind man holds the title, in the end, he still gains nothing. But the human heart is not easily satisfied. Elise held Bruno, and at the crucial moment of intimacy, she proposed getting a marriage certificate. Bruno suddenly opened his eyes wide, his misty gaze instantly turning cold. Elise could only feel a chill running down her spine, enveloped by a sense of dread, her expression turning aggrieved. "Bruno, I love you so much. Why can't we get the marriage certificate openly? Can't we just use a fake marriage certificate to deceive that blind fool? Do you really want our child to be born a bastard?" Elise placed Bruno's hand on her belly, showing a look of sadness. Now the entire family accepted her, and even if Katarina entered the Law family, she would have no standing. Bruno raised his hand and slapped Elise hard, his gaze filled with warning. "Did I not tell you that I, Bruno, can give you everything except a title? My wife can only be Katarina." Elise covered her face, filled with resentment, yet dared not show it. Things have already come to this point, yet Bruno still cares so much for that blind woman, which makes Elise feel intense jealousy. "I hope you never hear you call Katarina blind again. She has sacrificed so much for me, and I absolutely cannot let her down." Bruno suddenly remembered Katarina was still at home, lacking a sense of security. Even though there was a nanny taking care of her, he still felt uneasy. The reason he agreed to hold the wedding, besides Elise being the father of the child, was that he could provide emotional value and the thrill of infidelity. But during the wedding, the image of Katarina before leaving the villa kept flashing in my mind. It seemed different from usual. She never said goodbye. That indifferent expression of liberation felt like an eternal farewell, like a thorn piercing the heart, causing him to be restless throughout the wedding. Elise noticed his distraction and immediately crouched down, using all her strength to attend to him. Bruno shuddered, firmly pressing down on Elise's head, slowly closing his eyes. Today was the wedding night, and Elise was usually quite obedient, so he thought of it as a reward this time. His eyes misted over again, and before long he was entangled with Elise, the entire villa echoing with passionate moans. Elise seemed to deliberately delay, constantly changing outfits to seduce Bruno. Every time Bruno thought of Katarina being home alone and wanting to leave, he would see her stunning figure and fall for her again, until the late hours of the night. Bruno finally crawled out of bed, glanced at his watch, exclaimed in surprise, and hurriedly dressed before rushing out of Law Family. He is organizing clothes in the car, afraid of revealing any flaws. But remembering that Katarina couldn't see, he finally felt a sense of relief. A few days ago, Katarina was in a bad mood, likely upset that he hadn't had time to accompany her. Feeling guilty, Bruno decided to make it up to her in the coming days. After parking the car, he collected his emotions and walked into the living room, calling out to Katarina. The villa was silent except for the darkness, offering no response, which made Bruno feel an ominous premonition that lingered in his heart. Refusing to dissipate, Bruno went to the guest room, not seeing Katarina's figure, and hurriedly searched the entire villa. Katarina, I just got home from work. Where are you? Don't scare me. As the search through the entire villa yielded no trace of Katarina, Bruno's heart sank, and a terrifying scene began to surface in his mind, that of Katarina leaving. But upon reflection, Katarina couldn't see. It was impossible to leave. Bruno forced down his inner panic and hurriedly called his assistant to inquire about the situation. The assistant, however, delivered a thunderous piece of news. Katarina sold all the expensive gifts Bruno gave her online for $9.90. In light of Katarina's disappearance, Bruno was struck as if by lightning. Collapsing to the ground, he had a vague inference that he could not accept. Katarina left. Chapter 10. Bruno was furious, scolding his assistant mercilessly, asking why such a big matter wasn't mentioned earlier. Katarina loved her so much, willing to give everything for her. How could she possibly sell a gift she cherished like life itself? Bruno clearly remembered that when they first got together, even a single leaf given casually would be treasured by Katarina, who would smile and say she wanted to create a house specifically to display the gifts, feeling her love every time she saw them. Even though she couldn't see him later, Katarina would often caress, her hollow eyes betraying a deep affection. Now that he knows Katarina has sold all the gifts, Bruno can hardly accept it. The assistant actually feels quite wronged. When the news broke, Bruno was at home preparing for his wedding. Since he had decided to marry Elise, he felt it was inappropriate to disturb his excitement, which is why he chose to keep it a secret. After Bruno was enraged, he ordered the assistant to spare no expense in buying back all the gifts, and the top priority was to find Katarina. He felt that Katarina must have misunderstood something to leave home. As long as he explained clearly, they would surely be as loving as before. Bruno was troubled, pacing back and forth in the room, trying to comfort himself. Katarina is just throwing a little tantrum. She probably won't leave me, and once she cools down, she'll come back home. By then, I will explain to her clearly that I have always loved her, and that will never change. He sent many people to search for Katarina's whereabouts, sitting at home waiting as the days dragged on, until dawn, when his subordinates reported one after another that there was no sign of Katarina. Bruno only then realized that something was wrong. This was different from the previous situation. Katarina seemed to have vanished into thin air, never to return home. Bruno was not discouraged. He had kept his affair with Elise well hidden, warning everyone around him that she could never learn the truth. So he directly used his connections to retrieve Katarina's call records. Bruno checked the call records and, aside from one unreachable number, saw an unexpected name. When she saw the message Elise sent to Katarina, her vision went black, and she nearly fainted, only to be overwhelmed by a surge of rage. Elise, how dare you? In the call records, Elise not only sent various indecent pictures of her sleeping with someone, but also unleashed a barrage of vicious curses and mockery. Knowing that Katarina wouldn't see it, Elise deliberately aimed to provoke her. None of this mattered much, but some of Elise's voice messages sent Bruno into a frozen abyss. The hot summer wind felt like 1,000-year-old ice, his body frozen stiff. Bruno trembled while clutching the call records, his face turning pale with fear. I told you long ago, you could never compete with me. Just a flick of my finger, and Bruno would be eager to see me. Unfortunately, you are blind and cannot witness our loving scene. Don't you think Bruno loves you the most? That's just pity for your pathetic act of being a cripple. I am already pregnant with Bruno's child. He will have a wedding with me. You are just a pathetic creature that no one wants. Hurry up and die. Listening to Elisa's voice messages sent to Katarina, Bruno felt as if the world was spinning around him. Unlike her usual obedient and sensible demeanor, Elise is a complete scoundrel. He had warned Elise countless times not to provoke Katarina, otherwise she would bear the consequences. Katarina had long known about her situation with Elise, so this time leaving might mean never coming home again. Bruno crouched on the ground, tightly holding onto the pillow that still carried Katarina's fragrance, letting out a hysterical scream, his heart feeling as if a large hole had been gouged out, pain flooding his entire body, making it impossible to breathe. Curled up in the guest room for an unknown amount of time, my phone kept buzzing with messages, Elise urging me to come home, where a feast was already prepared to celebrate their wedding. Bruno returned to the Law family villa with red eyes and a cold expression. At this moment, the villa's living room was filled with joy, as family members gathered around Elise, offering various blessings. Elise spotted Bruno entering from a distance, her face immediately showing a look of grievance as she approached and took his hand. Weary newlyweds. Bruno, how could you bear to leave me behind? Bruno, this is where you are wrong. Elise, although you grew up at home, your status is different now. You are newlyweds and should spend more time with her. Law mother has always been very fond of Elise and hopes to become a real family, but is extremely dissatisfied with Paisingji, believing that a blind person is unworthy of her son. Law father nodded in agreement. When the child is older, you can transfer the shares from that blind person to Elise. After all, she is a normal person and will take over the company management in the future. Others echoed, mostly praising Elise. Elise, her eyes sparkled with excitement, and her heart was filled with joy. The reason she sought to please Bruno was simply to gain wealth and power, wasn't it? Bruno, I don't care about titles or shares. As long as you can stay by my side, I will be content. Elise lowered her head, her eyes red, as if she had suffered a great injustice. Strangely, Bruno had not spoken since entering the room, his gaze filled with coldness. Elise felt that the script was wrong. In the past, as long as she slightly lowered her stance, Bruno would comfort her. But at this moment, there was not a hint of reaction. She raised her head just as she was about to speak, when a vase came crashing down on her head. Bruno grabbed Elisa's collar, his tone filled with hatred. I warned you not to provoke Katarina. Why didn't you listen? He picked up the utensils from the table and threw them madly at Elise. Elise let out a scream like a slaughtered pig, her face covered in blood. Looking horrifying, the Law family's parents rushed forward to intervene, but met with the same fate. The once joyous celebration turned into a scene of chaos. The entire living room was so quiet one could hear a pin drop, and everyone held their breath in fear, staring at the crazed Bruno. Bruno sat on the ground, ignoring the feeble pleas of Elise, his expression vacant. Katarina, she doesn't want me anymore. Chapter 11. Everyone in the Law family was stunned. What was supposed to be a good celebration turned into this, and they all looked towards Bruno, who was sitting on the ground, losing his mind. Elise lay on the ground moaning, her mind a blank, her eyes filled with fear, only now truly realizing Katarina's deep position in Bruno's heart. But the jealousy in her heart grew more and more frenzied. Why had she done so much yet still not received any recognition? A blind person stays at home all day, doing nothing and still receiving Bruno's love. Elise's eyes were bloodshot. Gritting her teeth, Bruno, we grew up together. Our bond far surpasses that blind person's. Before she appeared, we had already pledged ourselves to each other. She stole you away. She is the mistress. Bruno slowly raised his head, staring at Elise with eyes full of hatred. If it weren't for Elise's provocation, Katarina wouldn't have left in sadness. Law mother stepped forward to mediate, forcing a smile. Bruno, let it go now that she's gone. Elise is pregnant. Don't upset her. A blind person isn't worth it. Law father nodded, stroking his chin. Since the person is already gone, we might as well set Elise upright. Shut up! Bruno's face changed dramatically, fiercely sweeping his gaze around, his eyes scanning the faces of each Law family member. Have you all forgotten Katarina's contributions to the Law family? When the Law family went bankrupt, if it weren't for Katarina's mother putting forth all her savings, we would all be sleeping on the streets. Katarina lost her eyes to save me. Have you all forgotten? Bruno was trembling with anger, tears of pain streaming down his face, unable to accept his parents' cold-bloodedness. Her words caused the expressions of everyone to change, leaving them unable to refute or contradict. That was her choice. No one forced her. Elise harbored resentment against Katarina, disregarding Law family parents' objections. With a cold smile on her face, Pei family mother and son are ambitious and ruthless. A country bumpkin wants to enter high society, but must pay the price. Don't think too highly of them. They are merely pretending to be nice because they see your innocence. Perhaps that revenge was arranged by Pei family mother and son. Isn't it just relying on a bit of kindness to want to ride on Law family's back? Now facing retribution, the old woman deserves her fate. The blind should also leave, preferably dying outside, never to return. Elise was driven to a twisted expression by intense jealousy, no longer able to care about anything else, revealing a dark side. It truly shocked everyone present. The Law parents were expressionless, offering no rebuttal, as if they had long accepted Elise's words. Bruno looked at his parents, his voice trembling. Do you also feel this way? Law mother forced a smile, too afraid to answer, but Law father furrowed his brow and snorted, look at yourself now. Where is the appearance of the Law group president? You've turned the house upside down for a blind person. Without waiting for Bruno to retort, his expression furious. If you really cared about the blind man, you wouldn't be with Elise, nor would you let her get pregnant. And you certainly wouldn't hold a wedding. We did everything according to your wishes. And now that the person is gone, you blame everyone else. Is that interesting? A single word awakened the dreamer. Bruno stood frozen in place. His heart felt as if it were pierced by countless steel needles, so painful that he could hardly breathe. But Bruno would not admit it. Everything was under control. If it weren't for Elise acting on her own, Katarina would have remained oblivious forever. He had planned it all along, raising children with Elise while growing old together with Katarina. You have betrayed the kindness of Katarina and her child. You will have to pay the price. Bruno stumbled as he got up and walked outside. No one dared to stop him, letting his parents' shouts echo behind him. He just wanted to quickly find Katarina to admit his mistake. By the way, Katarina cannot see, so he can falsely claim that it was all Elise's scheme. Katarina loves herself so much, trusts herself completely, and will definitely choose to forgive. Bursting out of the villa, Bruno exerted all his strength to search for Katarina, but she had searched almost every corner of the city to no avail. For 3 whole days, Bruno offered a sky-high reward. Anyone who could provide a trace of Katarina would receive 1 million. But Katarina seemed to have vanished into thin air. Bruno returned to the villa, squatting in the dirt of the yard, staring blankly at the wilted begonia flowers. He held on to a glimmer of hope in his heart, believing that as long as he found Katarina, all problems could be resolved. Katarina won't abandon me. She's just angry and has run away for a while, but she will definitely come back home. Bruno muttered to himself, no longer resembling the noble and domineering figure he usually was. His hair a mess, like a madman, repeating this phrase over and over. Just when he held hope for Katarina to come home, he received a call from the rehabilitation doctor. Chairman Law, may I ask how Miss Lin's eyes are? She regained her sight half a month ago, and we would like to make a follow-up visit. What did you say? Bruno's head exploded with a roar. His body was like a nail, brutally pinned to the spot from head to toe, and his face instantly turned pale. Miss Lin regained her sight half a month ago and immediately went home to share the good news with you. Didn't you know? What the doctor said next. Bruno could not hear at all. If there was still a glimmer of hope before, now it feels like standing on the edge of a deep abyss. Did Katarina regain her sight half a month ago? Chapter 12. An indescribable fear surged in his heart. On this scorching summer day, He felt icy all over, and in Bruno's world, all sound was lost, leaving only one thought. Katarina can see. Regaining her sight half a month ago, didn't she witness the absurd scene at the villa? Bruno felt the world spinning, a boulder pressing on his chest, making it hard to breathe. He couldn't imagine the scene at that time and how much harm it caused Katarina. The man I love is entwined with another woman right in front of me. Just imagining that scene makes my heart ache. How could I bear to see it all day long? Katarina. Endless regret washes over me. Bruno's persistent hope collapses, and the image of Katarina leaving plays out like a movie. Scene by scene. What have I done? In the villa, he was with Elise right in front of her. And on the cruise ship, fireworks and gifts were engraved with another woman's name. He even married Elise behind her back. He loves Katarina so much. Why would he do such a beastly thing? Bruno lay in the withered flowers, staring wide-eyed, tears of regret bursting forth. Even if he found Katarina now, would he still have the face to see her? A painful moan escaped his mouth as he rolled on the ground like a madman, his precious clothes torn apart. As if he couldn't feel the wounds on his skin, he used the self-abusive way to alleviate the pain in his heart. But no matter how he did this, his heart felt as if it were being sliced open, the pain causing his body to spasm. Not knowing how long had passed, Bruno was shaken awake in a semi-conscious state, and through the haze, he saw Katarina's face. He grabbed her tightly and cried out, "Katarina, I was wrong. Please don't leave me." The woman in his arms was stiff all over, and the yard was filled only with the sound of heavy breathing. Bruno cried in sorrow, but soon sensed something was wrong. Katarina never wore perfume, and when he suddenly looked up, he saw Elise's enchanting face. He forcefully pushed Elise away, his expression of tenderness instantly turning cold. "What are you doing here?" Elise knelt on the ground, holding Bruno's thigh, her tone mournful. "Bruno, please don't ruin yourself. It pains me to see." In the past, when Elise showed her gentle side, Bruno would be deeply pained, but at this moment, he was utterly indifferent. How could he not know Elise's intentions? She merely sought wealth and status, but for some reason, he found himself lost in Elise's repeated gentle assaults. Perhaps it was the dullness and tranquility of living with Katarina that made him crave some excitement. And Elise, as the adopted daughter of the Law family, just happened to provide a crazy opportunity. The greed that once came from the excitement brought by Elise is now matched by the resentment towards her. Bruno stared at Elise with a gaze that was cold and ruthless. Like a chilling wind, Elise couldn't help but shiver, instinctively pulling her neck in, forgetting to play the role of the deeply affectionate. "You are right. It's all your fault. Katarina has suffered so much pain. I want you to repay it 100-fold. 1,000-fold. Elise turned pale, realizing Bruno was shooting her a cold glance, and she immediately got up to escape. Unfortunately, it's too late. Bruno ordered someone to bind Elise, his face full of anger. "What right do you have to scold Katarina as blind? Everything that the Law family has now is thanks to Katarina. You should first experience the unseen fear." "Bruno, no. I was wrong. Give me a chance. I will never provoke my sister-in-law again." Bruno, with a cold face, took her to the basement and brutally gouged out Elise's eyes. The villa echoed with piercing screams, lasting the entire night. Elise was tortured to the point of wishing for death. She lost her eyes and her legs, becoming a complete waste. But Bruno felt it was not enough and continued to torment her. What Bruno didn't expect was that Elise had long been prepared. While she was imprisoned in the basement, she began to counterattack with the means she had arranged. Law family ungratefulness. Bruno's posts about manipulating emotions have sprung up like mushrooms after rain, creating a huge wave on the internet. Bruno's infatuated persona has collapsed, and his image is irreparable, leading to a frenzy of societal resistance against Law Group's products. In a single night, Law Group's stock plummeted, instantly revealing its true nature. Even if it hasn't gone bankrupt, it's merely surviving by a thread. This has Law family in a panic, hurry to the villa to discuss strategies with Bruno. But Bruno is consumed by remorse, numbing himself with alcohol, living in a drunken stupor, completely ignoring the company's affairs. As the building is about to collapse, the Law family faces bankruptcy. and the Law family parents are frantic. Once, there was Katarina who risked everything to save her son. Now, with the winds of change, no one dares to get involved. The Law family parents stormed into the villa in anger, blaming a blind man for turning Bruno into a useless person, nearly leading to the Law family's bankruptcy. They loathed Katarina and their son. Bruno was lying on the ground, holding the pillow that Katarina had slept on, his gaze vacant. Despite their frustration, the Law family parents felt helpless. At this moment, the best solution was to find Katarina. But in such a vast world, where could Katarina be? Chapter 13. As Bruno and Elise were holding their wedding, Katarina got into a taxi heading to the airport, wiping away the traces of the villa. Determined to completely disappear from Bruno's world, the plane landed, and after several transfers, she finally arrived at the Pei family village. This is a hidden village in the southwest region. Along the way, all that could be seen were towering mountains. Even having to trek over the peaks might frighten young people accustomed to big cities. However, Katarina's mood was good, as she enjoyed the lush green mountains and clear waters, breathing in the fresh air, her recently restored eyes relishing the world's original colors. She has some expectations for Pei family village, which is the place where her mother grew up and will also be the place where she grows old. Away from Bruno's harm, the shackles in her heart disappeared, and Katarina stepped into a new life. When she arrived at Pei family village and saw the scene before her, she was deeply shocked. I originally thought that the place she arrived at was isolated from the world, with no connection to the outside. But Pei family village looked completely different from my imagination. With the haziness of the Jiangnan mist and the mystery of an ancient village deep in the mountains, standing on the hill and looking far away, it was as if I saw a historical painting. At that moment, Katarina fell in love with Pei family village. Entering the village, a bluestone path runs through it. On the left is a soft, satin-like small river, quietly flowing, and the stilted houses are where the villagers live. The entire village is hazy in the misty rain. Katarina walks on the crisp bluestone path, and her restless heart suddenly finds peace. She walks quietly, as if forgetting time, immersed in the beauty around her. The moment she steps into the village, Katarina feels every cell in her body leap with joy. Yet she remains calm and unhurried. This is the slow pace that is most lacking in city life. She loves this place and looks forward to walking the paths her mother once walked. Katarina is sitting under a banyan tree, dipping her legs into the cool river water, feeling completely at one with the village, able to truly sense joy, anger, sorrow, and happiness. She closed her eyes, took a long breath, and felt in her heart that this was quite good. Katarina spent an entire day exploring half of Pei family village. She was in no hurry to find a place to stay, as if Pei family village could be home anywhere. Her presence did not bring much surprise to the villagers. When they met, it was with kind smiles and warm hospitality. If it weren't for the phone ringing and the manager asking if she had arrived, Katarina might have stayed at someone else's house. When she arrived at the place the manager had arranged, carrying her backpack, she saw a silver-haired old woman standing on a bridge, smiling affectionately at her from afar. The moment she saw the old man, Katarina's eyes turned red, instantly recognizing his identity, because she looked too much like her mother. The afterglow of the setting sun bathed the old man, enveloping him in a layer of loving light. Katarina had 1,000 words in her heart, but they choked in her throat as she silently walked up to him. The old man stroked Katarina's head, his murky eyes brimming with tears, and he simply said one sentence: "It's good that you came back." Katarina could no longer control herself, as if all the grievances and sadness she had endured over the years were finally released. Crying heart-wrenchingly, on the wind and rain bridge, Grandma held Katarina's hand, quietly listening to her tell stories from outside. When she learned that her daughter had passed away, the white-haired person sending off the black-haired one, her stooped body trembled slightly, then returned to calm. After Katarina finished her confession, she looked up at Grandma, whose face was full of wrinkles, radiating a hint of tenderness. Grandma said nothing, just pointed to the mountain top. "Come home with me." The words "go home" instantly stirred a pang of sorrow in Katarina's heart. She felt like a wayward son who had wandered for years, finally finding the home of her soul. Even living in a large villa in the city, there is not a trace of the feeling of home. Like a wandering soul, silently enduring suffering and pain, Bruno's betrayal, Law family's selfishness, left Katarina's heart riddled with wounds. She finally has a home. Chapter 14. Grandma's house is on the hill. A simple wooden building. Though small, it is fully equipped, exceptionally clean, and filled with the scent of herbs. Katarina has slept at home for several days, seemingly trying to make up for her previous insomnia. Every morning when she got up, Grandma would place breakfast by the bedside and then leave with her basket. There were often visitors who came to pay their respects to Katarina. It was only later that Katarina learned that Grandma was a very skilled traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, having saved many lives from the hands of the King of Hell. And over time, many patients with difficult ailments came seeking her help. There were even some cancer patients who found hope for survival in Grandma. In the days that followed, Katarina accompanied Grandma to the mountains to gather herbs and also helped organize the medicinal materials as an assistant. Grandma intended to take her as a successor, gradually teaching her the knowledge of traditional Chinese medicine. Katarina also had a talent for medicine, and within just 3 months, she was able to recognize most herbs and their effects. Except for the quiet nights, Grandma would occasionally sigh, lamenting that her mother had even greater talent. But unfortunately, from childhood to adulthood, Katarina never knew who her father was, only living with her mother. Because of the old man's kindness to the Law family back then, her mother spared no effort to repay him. When Katarina was very young, she asked her mother why others had fathers. Mother stroked her head, smiled, and gazed at the clouds on the horizon. Your father is a hero. The reason he isn't here with you is because he has an important mission he cannot leave. Katarina seemed to understand but had seen her mother silently shed tears several times. She knew that asking about her father would make her sad, so she never asked again after that. Grandma seemed to know something about her father, but she kept it a secret. One day, a patient came from outside, looking very handsome but with a somewhat strange personality. No matter how much Grandma inquired, he remained silent the entire time. Only the butler beside him responded. He was an exceptionally handsome young man, like a cold moon hanging in the night sky, clearly in front of him yet separated by a vast distance. Even when Katarina, as the host, took the initiative to speak, he merely cast a faint glance before turning back to gaze at an azalea flower in the mountains. At first, I thought the boy was unenthusiastic due to a serious illness, but Grandma said it was hysteria, and many renowned doctors couldn't cure it, so she placed her last hope on her. After taking his pulse, Grandma didn't prescribe any medicine. Instead, she let him stay at home for a few days, with his daily care managed by Katarina. Katarina really didn't want to. She had an innate hostility towards handsome men, but she couldn't resist her grandmother's request and had to comply. The boy didn't know the name, but he liked to sit in the yard and watch the flowers. For some reason, Katarina stood on the upper floor, looking at the quiet boy downstairs, feeling a sense of shared suffering. He had suffered many pains in the past, allowing him to resonate with those who had fallen into darkness. The boy must have experienced an extremely sorrowful story, which led her to have a sense of indifference towards life, and even towards existence itself. However, Katarina did not disturb, but instead read a book upstairs. Anyway, Grandma said that as long as there are 3 meals a day, it will be fine. As the sun sets, the sky is tinged with gold, and the azaleas bloom in the wind. The Pei family village is shrouded in a layer of misty rain. Katarina leans against the window, flipping through the difficult and obscure books on traditional Chinese medicine, while the boy in the yard downstairs closes his eyes and listens to the wind. This scene seems to be etched in the eternal timeline. No one can bear to disturb the beautiful picture under the gentle breeze. The boy seemed to sense something, looking up just in time to see the woman reading upstairs. Katarina also sensed it, lowering her head to look. Their eyes met, as if Pei family village's river had accumulated years of sediment. And in that glance, it felt like an eternity. In that moment, the boy seemed to perceive the sadness in Katarina's eyes and the pain hidden in her heart. Thus, the two engaged in their first serious conversation in 3 days. My name is Samuel. My name is Katarina. Katarina and Samuel met in Pei family village. Two wounded hearts attempting to connect. Two lonely souls trying to comfort each other. Katarina wants Samuel to be well. Samuel wants to understand Katarina. Thus, a certain ambiguous atmosphere began to sprout in the hearts of the two. Chapter 15. On a cold night, the lonely lamp is not desolate, and the cold moon hangs high with lingering warmth. This is Katarina and Samuel's first conversation. It was simple, but it was a good start. Katarina doesn't know why. Despite suffering severe harm from Bruno, she no longer yearns for so-called love. It wasn't until she met Samuel that she understood what the magnetic field of human nature truly is. It is a kind of mutual attraction, neither too much nor too little, neither cold nor hot, just right in the season of spring. Katarina vaguely understood why Grandma wanted her to take care of Samuel. Samuel could be said to be healthy, or he could be said to be critically ill. The 7 emotions and 5 desires in traditional Chinese medicine are extremely important for the body, which also explains why Grandma insisted on keeping Samuel. Two broken souls need to comfort each other. Since that evening's gentle breeze greeting, their relationship has drawn closer, but they still spoke little. It's just that Samuel can barely accept Katarina getting close. The two can sit on the swing in the yard, quietly watching the sunset until night falls. Not a word. They could also sit by the small river in the Pei family village, dipping their legs into the icy water, swaying back and forth, the moon in the water broken and round, round and broken. 1,000 words are not as good as a smile exchanged. The steward of his family was accompanying nearby, and upon seeing the smile on the young master's charming face, he jumped up in excitement, his voice trembling and his eyes red. This is the first time the young master has smiled since his father's death. No matter how many psychologists he has seen or how many renowned specialists he has consulted, Samuel's heartache could not be cured. After much inquiry, he arrived at the Pei family village, hoping for a miracle, and unexpectedly found a remedy. As he watched the young master's face gradually become more radiant, even simple meals could alleviate his sorrows, and the butler cried tears of gratitude, repeatedly saying thank you. Grandma looked at Katarina, her murky eyes reflecting a hint of pain. How could she not know the inner turmoil of her granddaughter? If it could not be resolved, it would ultimately lead her down a path of no return. And Samuel's appearance was just right. Traditional Chinese medicine is truly miraculous. Katarina and Samuel's second serious conversation took place on a misty wind and rain bridge, where she sat in front of her easel, depicting the most beautiful side of Pei family village in her heart. Looking at the painting that resembled a fairyland, Samuel stood behind her, gazing intently for a long time, then nervously asked, "I want to learn to paint. I can teach you." Thus, the two often came to the wind and rain bridge, painting the beauty they held in their hearts against the backdrop of green mountains and clear waters. As Samuel gradually opened his heart, the heaviness that once enveloped him dissipated, replaced by a yearning for new beginnings. But Katarina fell into silence. She stood on the wind and rain bridge, gazing into the distance, and her mind involuntarily conjured the scene of her mother teaching her to paint. Her mother said that when a person is sad, they can find solace in nature, which can alleviate suffering and bring inner peace. She deliberately used painting to guide Samuel out of the shadows in his heart. Yet it evoked painful memories. Her mother had left her forever, and they could never meet again. The ingratitude of the Law family shattered Katarina's expectations of life in the outside world. Bruno's emotional betrayal made Katarina always hesitant about love. So when a boy with a similar magnetic field appeared beside her, attracting each other, she became more cautious and felt even lonelier. At this moment, Samuel keenly noticed Katarina's sadness and unexpectedly held her hand. Katarina was stunned, looking down at that small hand, feeling the warmth and love being conveyed. The golden evening glow, the wind and rain bridge of time, and that perfect face breaking through darkness towards light opened a gap in her heart. Everything feels so natural. Samuel rested his head on Katarina's shoulder, closed his eyes, and smiled. Grandma suddenly said that Samuel's illness was cured, and he no longer needed to stay in Pei family village. Before leaving, Samuel gave the peace charm around his neck to Katarina and told her he would come back. On the day he left, Katarina had a light in her eyes. From that day on, Katarina liked to wait at the village entrance, looking at the mountain road leading into the village. Beneath her feet was a fork in the road, yet she could never take a step to leave this place. Grandma on the hill silently observed, shaking her head, filled with regret, just one step away from living for oneself. After more than 3 months, the deepest sorrow hidden in my heart gradually faded, replaced by longing for someone. Using love to heal love was the best remedy Grandma could think of. During the 99 days that Samuel was gone, a medical team arrived from outside, wanting to collaborate with the Pei family village to tackle the issue of cancer. It is said that this medical team traveled all over the country, specifically looking for heirs of traditional Chinese medicine families. Grandma thought it was a good opportunity and hoped to pass on the medical skills she had accumulated over a lifetime. So she agreed. Katarina accompanied, but saw the last person she wanted to meet in the medical team. Chapter 16. In the first few days after arriving at Pei family village, Katarina woke up every night from nightmares, dreaming of Bruno piercing her heart with an awl, while Elise smiled grotesquely beside her. She fell into an endless abyss, plummeting without end, a fate worse than death. Grandma had seen the tears flowing from her dreams, which is why she kept Samuel around. Two broken souls warmed each other, finally achieving some effect. I thought that letting go of past obsessions would allow me to face the world calmly. But the moment I saw Bruno, Katarina's face turned pale, and her body reacted with intense pain. At the entrance of the village where the medical team was located, there was a sea of azaleas, and among the crowd, one wildflower stood out in its brilliance, its eyes shining with excitement. The moment Bruno saw Katarina, he trembled all over and rushed forward like a madman, not feeling a thing even after falling several times and scraping his knees. He embraced Katarina tightly, tears streaming down his face. "Katarina, I have searched for you, and it has been so painful." Bruno wanted to cry out loud, to express the grievances of the past few months, but he was afraid of scaring Katarina, so he could only hold on with all his strength, terrified that she would disappear in the next moment. Since Katarina left, the law group has fallen into an unprecedented crisis. Without the support of Lin's family fortune, it is on the brink of bankruptcy. Bruno, having lost the woman he loved most, was engulfed in regret and pain, spending his days in a drunken haze, numbing his nerves with alcohol, because every time he sobered up, he would miss her painfully. A month passed like this, and he became a madman, first mutilating Elise, making her experience Katarina's pain 100-fold, and then severing ties with his parents. The Law family's parents were furious, hurling all sorts of harsh words at their own son, but one phrase awakened Bruno. "The entire group is Lin mother's hard work. If she sees the company collapse, she would find it hard to rest in peace even in death." Bruno decided to pick himself up again, solely for the sake of atonement. Fortunately, netizens have no memory. Bruno spent a fortune to remove negative opinions and promised to donate all his assets after death. The law group was revived. Although it is far from its peak, it can be said to have survived. After stabilizing the company, Bruno resigned from all positions and searched across the country for Katarina's trace. He vaguely remembered Lin mentioning that she came from a small mountain village and was born into a family of traditional Chinese medicine practitioners. Thus, Bruno spent a fortune to establish a medical team, searching the world for cooperation. In 2 months, he traveled all over the southwest, and the Pei family village was the last place. If he couldn't find her there, he might go insane. Unexpectedly, at the final stop, he saw the beloved he had been longing for, and Bruno acted as if he were mad. "Katarina, during this time without you, I have been worse than dead. I love you." What responded to Bruno was a harsh slap. He covered his cheek, looking at Katarina in disbelief. Katarina said calmly a word of disgust and then turned to leave. "If I had known, I wouldn't have come out with Grandma and encountered something filthy." Katarina will never forget Bruno and Elise in their compromising situation, where he held a knife, cutting her heart inch by inch. While professing his love for her, he revels with Elise. She has already stepped back to allow Bruno and Elise to be together. Why is she still entangled? Isn't this being foolish? Katarina's slap shocked everyone. The medical team looked at the boss in unison, wanting to say something but hesitating. Grandma watched the distant figure and Bruno weeping bitterly. her eyes flashing with a hint of anger and deep concern. In the following days, Katarina had nightmares again. As Bruno persisted, Katarina grew increasingly annoyed. No matter where she went, Bruno was always by her side. How thrilling it once was. Now it feels so humble. Bruno stooped to the lowest of lows to win back his lover, waiting every day outside the wooden building, like a stone waiting for its wife. He, just like before, brought Katarina breakfast and various precious gifts from outside. She even bought a piece of land nearby, intending to build a house. But Katarina turned a blind eye to all of this. Grandma noticed that something was increasingly wrong with her, and on a rainy day, she found Katarina to have a heart-to-heart talk. Katarina hesitated for a long time before finally revealing how deeply she had once loved Bruno, only to be cruelly hurt by him. I thought Grandma would comfort her, but she didn't. She simply told her that if she truly didn't love the other person, it was best to be clear about it. It was another misty, drizzly day, a night of pouring rain. Under the dim yellow light, Bruno stood in the rain, pleading for Katarina's forgiveness. Katarina looked at the distant view shrouded in mist and rain, and soon made a decision. Avoiding it all is not a solution. It is time to put an end to this. Katarina held an umbrella and walked towards Bruno. Bruno, trembling from the cold, felt a spark in his eyes. His thin lips quivered, and tears of grievance streamed down his face. He thought Katarina had chosen to forgive, feeling ecstatic. But Katarina's next words plunged him into deeper despair. Chapter 17. Katarina encountered the woman who haunted her like a nightmare once more. The chill of the rain was nothing compared to the pain in her heart. She summoned her courage to step out of the courtyard, gazing at the face she had once loved so deeply. Why bother? When you loved me, you betrayed our feelings, entwining with another woman in front of me. After leaving, you staged a sorrowful pursuit of your wife. Who are you trying to impress? A late confession of love is worth less than grass. Everything is merely a manifestation of selfishness. Bruno looked pale, his body trembling violently. He wanted to say something, but met only a pair of indifferent eyes. And in that instant, all the lines he had prepared choked in his throat, because he could see not a trace of pain or love in Katarina's eyes. Katarina, during this time, I have dreamed of you. I made a mistake, but from beginning to end, I have always loved you. Bruno cried very sadly. His attitude was very humble. It's my fault. I couldn't resist the temptation from outside. It was really too suffocating to be with you. I just wanted to find some excitement. Now I regret it. I will never contact Elise again. I have already made Elise terminate the pregnancy. If you give me one last chance, I will do everything to make up for it, even if it costs me my life. Can you love me one more time? Bruno knelt on the ground, holding on to Katarina's thigh, sobbing silently. Katarina listened to the heart-wrenching cries, her deep eyes filled with anger, staring into his eyes, each word piercing like a dagger. I no longer love you. Just go. No. Bruno gripped his pants tightly, shaking his head desperately, filled with immense fear in his heart. You once said that no matter what happens, you would always love me. Katarina did not answer, her thoughts drifting back to the night they fell in love. It was also a rainy day. They were both 18 that year. Bruno led her to a cotton tree, kissed her forehead, and said, "Let's be together." He could ignore the family's objections, and even if he left Law family, he would still marry Katarina. At that time, Katarina was very insecure, feeling unworthy of mission, and did not dare to agree. Bruno dragged her to Law family and declared in front of everyone that he would marry no one but Katarina. Despite the anger of Law family parents, nothing could change that. Lin's mother saw the purity of love in Bruno, and when Law family was on the verge of bankruptcy, she sold all their assets and used every possible connection to help Law family out of their predicament. Since then, Bruno's career gradually improved, and he firmly believed he had not chosen the wrong person. But it is unknown when it started. Bruno began coming home later and later, using the excuse of being busy with work, when in fact he was fooling around with Elise. You should know that when the Law family went bankrupt, Elise, fearing being implicated, sneaked out of the country, leaving the helpless Bruno to face everything alone. It was Katarina who stood by him as he made his comeback. Unfortunately, Bruno forgot the promises of the past, and it was she who personally strangled their relationship. Katarina indeed promised that no matter what happened, she would always be by her side. But she also said that once Bruno stopped loving her, she would choose to leave and never see him again. Now Bruno feels betrayed in love and wants to win her back. But Katarina no longer loves him. Bruno, seeing her silent, his tone became agitated. "You said you would love me for a lifetime. Why did you leave without a word and abandon me?" Katarina laughed in exasperation and retorted, "What do you think?" Before Bruno could argue, his face turned angry. "When my eyes got better, I rushed home to tell you, only to see you entwined with Elise, doing it right in front of me. The whole villa filled with your disgusting scent. Can you tell me this is love? On our anniversary, you took me to the cruise ship, and the sky was filled with fireworks bearing Elise's name. All the gifts on the ship were also her name. Is this love? When I was sick and sad, you left me in the villa while you held a wedding with Elise. Did you ever think about loving me?" With each question from Katarina, it felt like a heavy hammer striking at my heart. Bruno stared wide-eyed, filled with fear, his body trembling uncontrollably. He wanted to refute, but found he couldn't utter a single word. "In fact, I realized long ago that you were with Elise. I just pretended not to know. What I couldn't accept the most was that while I lay in the emergency room to save you, you were being affectionate with Elise in the parking lot. And on the day of my mother's funeral, I cried uncontrollably, and you, with Elise, were nearby." "Don't say that." Bruno covered his ears and screamed, "Please don't say that. Just hearing it is incredibly painful. I can't imagine how desperate Katarina must have felt at that time. Even though you've done so many wrong things, after your eyes recovered, my mom still let me give you 3 chances. She cared about you so much. She felt so sorry for you. How did you repay her?" "Bruno, don't use this self-destructive way to move yourself anymore. If you want to make amends, it's best to never appear in front of me again." The rain grew heavier, yet it couldn't drown out Katarina's faint voice, as if it were beating a drum in her heart. Bruno looked at the unfamiliar face, unsure whether it was rain or tears that wet his cheeks. He wanted to find even a trace of hidden love in Katarina's face. But unfortunately, he failed. At this moment, Katarina's gaze was chillingly calm, devoid of any love. In this moment, Bruno finally understood that the sordid things he had done had severed the emotional bond between them. Even if they were to entangle again, it would be meaningless. Bruno slowly stood up, his purple lips trembling, forcing a bitter smile. "Katarina, how did we end up like this?" Katarina couldn't be bothered to respond. He threw the umbrella on the ground and turned to walk towards the wooden building. This was the last thing she did for Bruno, and from now on, they would never meet again. Bruno watched the figure gradually disappear into the rain. As if he felt it was the last time, he squatted on the ground and cried out in pain. The rain grew heavier. A flash of lightning split the sky, illuminating the entire land. The azaleas on the mountain swayed in the wind and rain, while outside the yard, Bruno stood all night, his gaze filled with guilt, fixed on the window of the second floor, wanting to take one more look. By the next day, the weather cleared up, and the Pei family village returned to its former tranquility. Bruno left with the medical team, and last night Katarina slept soundly. Bravely take that step and clearly express the anger and decision in your heart to Bruno. The boulder pressing on my heart has vanished. Katarina pushed open the window, gazing at the lush green distance. Since returning to Pei family village, she felt relaxed for the first time. She seemed to have unlocked her shackles and regained her new life. Chapter 18. Katarina planted begonia flowers in the yard, and while accompanying Grandma to gather herbs, she discovered a flower on the edge of a cliff. Grandma said it was a variant of the begonia. Standing alone in the clouds, savoring solitude, she carefully picked the begonia flower and transplanted it in the yard, gazing at the blossom that symbolized new beginnings, as if her own life was blooming once again. Once in the villa's yard, Mother planted a patch of begonias, thinking it was Bruno who liked them. Later, Katarina understood that it was actually Mother who loved begonias. She seemed to see her mother going with Grandma to the mountains to gather herbs. And she also saw a begonia. She had her own life. But after giving birth to her, she was imprisoned in the mundane. Grandma saw that begonia and quietly wiped away the tears at the corners of her eyes, perhaps recalling a certain morning long ago when her daughter held the begonia, filled with expectations of beauty. Now, the begonia flower encountered by her granddaughter. It is unknown whether it is of the same origin as that one from back then, but it no longer matters. At this moment, Katarina's eyes no longer held sadness and pain. Instead, they resembled a rebirth, filled with hope. That night, Grandma saw that she was sleeping deeply, while outside the heavy rain fell. A boy stood under the tree, sorrowful, yet completely unaffected. She then knew Katarina had let go of the past. Since Bruno left, he never returned to Pei family village. Katarina's life entered a slow rhythm, always accompanying Grandma to treat the sick and learn about herbal medicine. This was not merely a hobby, but rather a kind of inheritance. Once Lin's mother disliked this way of life, wanting to see the outside world, and then she could never return. Only Grandma waits by the wooden building, year after year, hoping for her daughter to come home. Katarina has seen the outside world and experienced the pain of love, so she returned to the Pei family village to accompany the elderly. A year quickly passed, and perhaps due to her talent for medicine, Grandma has already started letting her consult patients alone. Katarina has been studying diligently, never daring to relax. As each patient recovers, their sickly faces bloom with a different kind of radiance, like begonia flowers on the edge of a cliff. Each person is a flower. She seems to have found the meaning of life. Katarina is very busy, dedicating all her time to studying traditional Chinese medicine, and has almost learned 7 or 8 of the skills from her grandma. According to her grandma, in another year or 2, she will be able to fully inherit the legacy. However, her grandma's health is deteriorating. She can no longer climb mountains and, as the village chief, has to manage various affairs. Yet, she still insists that Katarina get more exposure to the outside world, not wanting her to remain in the mountains all the time. Katarina feels fulfilled. During the day, her mind is filled with knowledge of traditional Chinese medicine and the recovery of patients. But at night, in the stillness, she thinks of that boy. Samuel has been gone for a long time, never contacting me, and I don't know what he is busy with, nor do I know if he still remembers. Once in a small village in a great mountain, I met a young man who resonated with me. The great mountains seemed to isolate 2 worlds. Katarina often sat at the mountain top, gazing at the white clouds on the horizon, the fresh herbs in her basket emitting a unique fragrance, wondering if the boy in the distance was also missing her. Occasionally, there would be postal deliveries from outside, and when opened, they contained some worthless trinkets. Katarina only took a glance before tossing the item away. Bruno, since leaving, although he hasn't come back to pester me, he still sends some gifts. From the postcard, I learned that Bruno has not returned to the company, but instead is traveling across the country with a medical team, often helping patients in the mountains. It seems like he is undergoing a spiritual redemption, asking for nothing in return, only seeking self-fulfillment. Katarina glanced at it and casually tossed it aside. She does not love Bruno. He cannot stir a single emotion within her. Grandma passed away on a sunny day. She lay in bed with her hands folded across her chest, a gentle smile on her face. She left in peace. Katarina did not shed tears, and held a low-key funeral with the help of her clan. Because of Grandma's good reputation, people from the whole village came to bid farewell, and even many patients she had saved from outside attended. The entire mountain was crowded with people, dark and oppressive, with no end in sight. Only Samuel was missing. Katarina held her grandmother's photo, walking numbly along the funeral procession, until the coffin was buried in the earth. She said nothing. Katarina sat on Grandma's favorite stool, lost in thought for 3 days and nights. On the 7th day after Grandma's passing, the cicadas chirped in the yard, and a phoenix flew out from the mountains, landing on the kapok tree outside the yard. Then came the sound of hurried footsteps. Katarina looked up and saw the boy she had been longing for. Chapter 19. The moonlight fell like water under the kapok tree outside the yard, and Samuel walked into view, breathing heavily like a fawn that had just sprinted through Lin. Katarina looked up, her gaze landing on Samuel's worn-out shoes, the tops caked with yellow mud, his pants torn in several places, and his arms bearing multiple bleeding wounds. Yet his face was filled with concern, adorned with a smile. She never questioned Samuel. In fact, among the many patients that Grandma has healed, 7 or 8 out of 10 do not come to pay their respects. In fleeting encounters, Grandma does not expect anything, nor does she demand anything. It all depends on the individual. But someone mentioned Samuel, saying he had lived at home for a while, which is something all patients long for. Yet he does not understand gratitude. Katarina pretended not to hear and cast a glance at the villagers who were defending her grandmother. Until now, Katarina had never met the manager who made the first phone call, and her grandmother did not explain. So there had been no interaction for over a year. Her grandmother left quietly without saying anything before she passed away. Katarina has now become alone again. In this vast world, only she walks in solitude. It is good that Samuel has come, like a point of starlight in the darkness, illuminating the way home. Let the 3 days without sleep not cause Katarina to lose herself. Samuel sat beside Katarina, looking at the night sky together, searching for their respective stars. Except for the previous apology, "I am late," Samuel no longer spoke, but silently stayed by his side. His love for Bruno was different from the passionate love of the past. There were no expensive gifts, nor was there a strong desire for possession. Samuel was just using actions to tell Katarina that no matter how late it is, he will always be by her side. Katarina should not have expected anything from Samuel after all. They had not established a relationship. It was just a seed of ambiguity sprouting in her heart. It cannot be called love. 2 broken souls once comforted each other in the courtyard, finding a point of connection. The longing in the deep night was cast towards the distant horizon. Samuel stayed in Pei family village for 3 days. With her companionship, the longing for Grandma in his heart faded. The two walked side by side on the bluestone path, and the silent companionship was, in fact, the longest confession of love. Sometimes sitting by the river, gazing at the clear water, and sometimes going to the wind and rain bridge to paint. But more often, I stay in the yard, guarding that begonia flower. The begonia flower growing on the edge of the cliff probably does not adapt to the gentle soil, and has yet to bloom. Grandma says it needs time, just like people need to adapt to their living environment. This begonia flower seems to carry something, holding Grandma's longing for her daughter. The begonia of the past was Katarina's love for Bruno, rotting at the roots, never to be revived again. The begonia today is like a rebirth, carrying Grandma's longing for her daughter. It also represents Grandma's care for Katarina. Waiting for the flowers to bloom is like waiting for a rebirth. Samuel stayed in the village for 7 days, and after receiving a phone call, he hurriedly left, wanting to take Katarina with him before he departed. But Katarina refused. She knew that Samuel had many things to handle outside. Having lost his parents, he bore no less than Katarina, but he never spoke of it. On the day Samuel left, he kissed Katarina. There were no promises made, nor deep expressions of love. Just that one glance seemed to pierce through the autumn waters. Katarina understood, nodded at him, and watched the distant figure leave. In the 6 months after Samuel left, there wasn't a single phone call, and Katarina gradually got used to life in the village. She shouldered her grandmother's bamboo basket, began to forage for herbs in the mountains, and also helped patients who came seeking medical advice. For this, she even obtained a medical qualification certificate. Time passed quietly like this, as if Grandma had never existed, yet her presence was etched in the marks of time. The begonia brought from the edge of the cliff finally bloomed in the 2nd year after being transplanted into the yard. That day, the misty rain blurred the view. Katarina stood on the balcony, holding a teacup, gazing into the distance. A feeling stirred in her heart as she looked down, and there she saw a vibrant begonia blooming in the wind. Flowers may bloom again, but one cannot return to their youth. Katarina packed her things, slung her bag over her shoulder, and left the Pei family village. Chapter 20. Grandma never asked Katarina to do anything. She always held back, which was quite clear. She did not want her to stay in the Pei family village. Katarina should have her own path to follow. rather than being trapped in the mountains because of an old woman. Wherever you come from, you will return there. Over the past year, Katarina has been contemplating where her heart belongs. She should return to her original city, the place where she lived for many years. But unfortunately, it is filled with too many Bruno's marks and painful memories. She could also go to the city where Samuel is, where there is a boy she misses. But Katarina went to a small town by the sea, because her mother once said that when she got old, she would live by the sea and collect shells on the beach. So Katarina first returned to the city, went to the cemetery to take her mother's ashes. It drizzled that day. Katarina held the urn, strolling down the street, returning to the familiar place after 2 years. Everything felt strangely unfamiliar. The hot air balloon hanging in the sky with Bruno will forever love Katarina has fallen into a corner of the city. The once envied fairy tale romance, as the female lead Katarina walks down the street, goes unrecognized. Time can make one forget everything. Katarina no longer has to deal with the annoying questions from reporters surrounding her as soon as she steps out, asking when she will get married. As the leader of Urban Enterprises, Law Group has lost its former glory and has become second-rate. Bruno has no intention of running a business. For the past 2 years, he has been engaged in charity work, helping patients in mountain villages regain their health. Since Katarina stopped receiving the postcards he sent, she has not disturbed him again. Like two parallel lines. There is no possibility of meeting now or in the future. It's not that I still hate Bruno or resent him for betraying his emotional promises and for being intimate with another woman in front of me. Bruno's impression in Katarina's mind has gradually faded, becoming insignificant. Even if we meet again, it will not evoke the same inner outrage as it did in Pei Family Village. The rain grew heavier, ever since she opened her heart, and the begonia flowers bloomed. Katarina, carrying her mother's ashes, wanted to spend the rest of her life in a seaside town where no one knew her. Unfortunately, there seems to be a hand arranging things in the dark. Just as Katarina took the urn from the cemetery, someone spread the news. This heavy rain blocked her way home. Katarina stood at the shop door by the roadside, watching the relentless rain, hesitating whether to take a break. A Maybach stopped in front of her. Bruno walked over to Katarina holding that black umbrella. Katarina did not expect to encounter him here. She was stunned for a moment, but quickly regained her composure. Bruno looked at Katarina with deep affection, knowing that even after 1,000 years, his obsession could not change. Unfortunately, in that moment of eye contact, Bruno noticed that in Katarina's eyes, there was no longer that deep love that once permeated his bones, only calmness and indifference. This is Katarina's emotion towards Bruno right now, even more cruel than hatred. Bruno held the black umbrella with trembling hands, quietly watching Katarina, as if waiting a lifetime if he didn't get in the car. Katarina let out a sigh, thinking she would never see him again in this lifetime, but unexpectedly encountered him, just like that rainy night when they first met. Getting into the Maybach, Bruno deliberately drove very slowly. The car was very quiet, and no one spoke. It seemed there was nothing to say. For more than 2 years, Bruno had been numbing his emotions with public welfare, fearing that if he had too much free time, he would miss Katarina, thus accumulating countless love words. The moment I could see Katarina, I was terrified to find that I couldn't say a word. The guilt after the affair gnawed at my spirit, making it hard to eat and sleep. Bruno was worried, fearing that if he said one wrong word, he would never gain the others' forgiveness again. The car did not return to the villa, nor did it go to Law Family, but instead arrived at an orphanage. Bruno finally spoke, telling Katarina that he would use 5% of the group's annual profits to sponsor the orphanage, as this was something Lin's mother had wanted to do. Katarina was silent for a moment and then said thank you. The rain has stopped. Katarina felt it was time to leave, rejecting Bruno's invitation, and headed to the airport alone. Just before leaving, she heard Bruno's voice behind her. Do you still hate me? Bruno's voice trembled slightly, afraid to look at Katarina's back. Katarina stopped in her tracks, not turning around. I haven't hated you for a long time. Will we be able to meet again? Just like friends. Bruno showed a pleading expression. She no longer hoped to be a couple with Katarina. Her only wish was to see her happy. Katarina did not respond and walked away briskly, until her figure disappeared into the crowd. Bruno sat on the ground, covering his face and crying. He clearly felt that this time, Katarina was leaving, and it was very likely that they would never meet again. They ultimately missed their chance. No matter how much charity work he did, it couldn't erase the harm done to Katarina. Regret and pain forever lingered in his heart. Katarina was no longer in the mood to entangle with Bruno. What she needed to do was take her mother's ashes and find a small seaside town. In the seaside town, one might spend a lifetime in solitude, or perhaps wait for the warmth of spring to arrive. The road ahead is uncertain, but there is no longer any regret. Chapter 21. Katarina got into the taxi and asked the driver to go slowly, to take a good look at the city, not out of nostalgia, but because she would never come back again. After her mother's ashes were taken away, there was nothing here that she cherished. The car passed by the law group building, and that golden sign was written by a calligrapher her mother had found, and it had not been replaced since. Katarina stole another glance. She suddenly finds a familiar face outside the building. Momentarily stunned, law family parents pushed a wheelchair, gathering a crowd, cursing at the law group. The woman in the wheelchair looked somewhat familiar. Her hollow eye sockets were extremely terrifying, and her two legs hung limply, having lost the ability to stand. Isn't this Elise? The law family parents brought Elise, blocking the entrance outside the building, frantically cursing their unfaithful son. This scene completely exceeded imagination. I originally thought that my departure would bring together Bruno and Elise. After all, they seemed so in love. I just didn't expect Elise to fall to the point of becoming a useless person, a tool for law family parents to force their son to ask for money. These selfish and self-serving people seem to be trapped by a rope, unable to separate for a lifetime. Katarina felt no schadenfreude. She merely glanced and instructed the driver to speed up. 3 days later, Katarina chose a beautiful coastal city and used her savings to buy a small house by the sea. She planted the seeds of the begonia flower in the yard, lying on a chair every day, enjoying the sea view. In her spare time, she found a part-time job in the city to pass the time. Her favorite was volunteering at the orphanage, where the innocent smiles of the children brought warmth to her monotonous life. Sometimes she would walk barefoot along the sandy beach, sitting on the rocks to paint the sunset at the horizon, while a few seagulls flew in the sky, diving into the huge setting sun, disappearing from sight. Katarina led a carefree life like this, filling her days with a packed schedule. However, the begonia seeds brought from Pei Family Village have yet to bloom. I don't know if it's due to the soil and water not being suitable, as they quietly lie in the soil, but Katarina is very patient and takes care of them meticulously. She consulted many experts online, but there was no effect. Experts say that begonia flowers are not suitable for planting by the sea because the climate is too humid. Katarina did not refute. The begonia seeds in the yard were like a certain obsession, and she believed that one day they would bloom. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye, and Katarina's yard turned into a sea of flowers. Every day when she returned from the orphanage, she would sit beside the begonia and talk to it, until one day it started to drizzle, and the world before her became hazy. Just as Katarina was about to step out, she saw a small umbrella drifting in the misty rain. She stopped in her tracks, gazing ahead with a dazed expression. The flower umbrella came to the edge of the courtyard, revealing a handsome but slightly weary face when closed, with a smile towards Katarina. In that instant, the entire sea of flowers in the courtyard was overshadowed. Samuel pushed open the gate, walked up to Katarina and smiled. "I'm sorry. I'm late." Katarina shook her head and smiled back. "No, you arrived just in time." The begonia in the yard, which had never bloomed, quietly blossomed. Their figures gradually drew closer, facing the sea. Spring blossoms,